Welcome, everybody. We're welcoming back Ross Benjamin, NFL analyst, and Ross is going to give us some input on these opening wild card NFL games that are on slate. Ross, what we're doing, hopefully you're having a very good start to your new year. And what I was wondering, the home underdog observation on these lines, how it's affected the lines this early in the week, today being Tuesday, and if any of the injury updates, if you're aware of any of those that might have had some impact already on these opening lines. So if you kind of just will do what you do best to give us your breakdown, Ross, we'd appreciate that.
Well, thank you, Mike. It's Tuesday when we're taping this, so games are still 4 and 5 days away on this wild card weekend. When we talk about the home underdogs, I'd like to talk more about the rarity of this weekend and the volume of home underdogs we're seeing. I mean, 3 of the 4 games have the home team as an underdog, and that's just a real rarity. I mean, Houston, Cincinnati, and Minnesota, all underdogs on Saturday and Sunday. And then you have the Washington Redskins, who are a mere 1 point favorite. I don't think I've ever recalled that happening. I look back to my database. Since 1980, there's only been 32 times in which home teams were an underdog in a playoff game.
That is rare.
32 times since 1980. We have 3 in one season right here, and it's just the first week of the playoffs. So it speaks volumes as to the mediocrity that we saw with some playoff teams this season. And, playoff home underdogs, Mike, they've gone 22-12-1 against the spread since 1980. They've won 20 of those 35 games outright. They've been a very nice value in this situation in NFL ATS playoff history, but you just never know. Once again, I'm a little leery just because of what we're seeing in not to beat a dead horse. Mediocrity. The lone exception here is Cincinnati as a 2.5 point dog.
And Ross, not to cut you off, but a word that comes to my mind when you say the mediocrity, or is it the parity, or do they blend together? And it is the fact that we have the home underdogs like this, 3 out of the 4 games, like you were saying. But is it literally based on the fact that the traveling team's just better? Like Seattle, in my eyes, I see no reason at all why they shouldn't comfortably cover this line. They're playing the best football they played all year. They are absolutely red hot and on fire. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, again, let me just reiterate here. I mean, Houston, we're looking at mediocrity, 9-7.
Sure.
Let's face it, the AFC South was not a very good division this season. Indianapolis in a down year. You got Tennessee and Jacksonville, very bad clubs. If you look at the records, Cincinnati, I think they're just an underdog because of the quarterback situation, and they'll be facing another red hot team in the Pittsburgh Steelers, albeit we'll touch upon their running back situation very shortly. And then the Minnesota Vikings, I think a lot can be made of the fact that what you just alluded to, how hot Seattle is, but also the fact that Seattle went into Minnesota late in the year and just drubbed the Vikings 38-7.
Yeah, that's when they got hot. That's when Seattle started to turn it on, and Minnesota has not forgot that, but I don't think Minnesota can defend this machine right now, and they seem to be healthy other than the running back position. Like you said, we'll touch on that. But, yeah, there's a lot of dynamics in all of these ball games and factors as to why the home underdogs might have a chance there. And I think the one that you mentioned, Ross, I like Cincinnati. That could be the one that wouldn't surprise me if a home dog there wins the game outright, because all they need A.J. McCarron to do is not lose the game, all right? And he's made some mistakes early on, but hopefully this week against Pittsburgh, he can do enough and let that defense suffocate Pittsburgh. So, again, that's my thoughts on that game. Any injury update on that particular game?
I mean, that's a game you're looking at. I thoroughly believe that if Andy Dalton was healthy, and he's listed as questionable right now. So, they haven't ruled him out yet. So that leaves a lot of uncertainty within that line. And I would advise to hold back, folks, to later in the week until a little more clarity comes into that quarterback situation. Dalton's having a career year, Mike. But by the same token, let's not forget, this is a quarterback that went 0-4 in the playoffs so far in his career. 1 touchdown against 6 interceptions in those contests, completing only 55% of his
Oh,
passes.
no doubt. He
So a
still has that
drastic
monkey on
difference.
his back, Ross. That monkey's been on his back, and I think there's no one more frustrated in that injury than him because he was putting together the best year. And I really think he was looking forward, saying, you know what, this is the year I can dump this monkey off my back, and I'll be damned if he didn't get hurt. And it's a shame, but you're absolutely right. You're hitting the nail on the head there.
Yeah, I mean, and then AJ McCarron. I mean, he's done a nice job since coming in.
Mm-hmm.
2-1 in his 3 starts, 6 touchdowns against 2 picks. Let's not forget, this is a quarterback that's used to high-profile situations. He's
Perfect.
not afraid of the big
Yep.
stage.
Yep.
3-year starter at Alabama, 39-3 in his career as a starter, 2 national titles. Of course, the NFL is a different game, but he's accounted himself awfully well.
Yeah.
I still would like Cincinnati's chances much better with Dalton healthy
Yeah.
than with McCarron right now. But
Yeah.
again, that's a viable option.
Well, I
that
like
you
that
just
also because you nailed it. He had more attention and more focus and media and spotlight at Alabama than he did in Cincinnati, just sitting behind the bench. And even now that he's starting, still, that doesn't scare him. I totally agree with that. And I believe he is capable of just operating that offense without hurting them. And if that happens, I think they're going to get the W. Matter of fact, I'll probably be banking some money on the money line with Cincinnati, again, because A.J. Green is playing very well, and they just got to do some safe routes, get the running game going, and rely on their defense, and that's what they do best. But, yeah, good
well,
point there,
and
Ross.
on the opposite side, if I could interject, on the opposite side of the field will be the Pittsburgh Steelers, whose strong suit is not their defense. This is not your vintage Pittsburgh Steeler team that wins with a strong running game, grinding it out, playing strong, disciplined football, and with a terrific defense. This is a defense that gives up a lot of yards. They've shown a lot of vulnerability. Now, here's the thing with Pittsburgh is, and I don't like getting into injuries. We talked about this off air, okay? Injuries to me are a moot point.
Yep.
They're all factored into the line. But in this particular instance, Mike, we're talking on Tuesday. The games are not till Saturday and Sunday. The
Yep.
Pittsburgh game goes on Saturday evening. And you know what I say in my analogy as far as injuries go in the playoffs? If you're doubtful, you're questionable. If you're questionable, you're probable. And if you're probable, you're 99.9% a go, right,
Yep.
at playoff time. If you can't suck it up during the playoffs
Yep.
as a pro, then you should be out of the game. Now,
Exactly.
having said that, Pittsburgh lost Le'Veon Bell earlier in the year.
Yeah.
Star running back, over 500 yards rushing, 11 touchdowns when he went out, or 5 touchdowns when he went out. But, they had the luxury of D'Angelo Williams, who had a lot of starting experience with the Carolina Panthers.
And he stepped up admirably. I was very, very impressed, Ross, with how he did step up. And matter of fact, I was in an airport in Panama getting back from Colombia watching the game when he hurt his ankle just a couple days ago. So I don't know the update on that. What is the update on D'Angelo Williams and that ankle?
Well, I mean, they carted him off. And, the old saying, as Rex Ryan has said on numerous occasions when the Bills went through all their injuries this year, if you don't finish a game, that's a pretty good sign you might not be able to go the following week. Now, that's during the regular season.
Yeah.
This, again, is the playoffs. Now, if he does go, how effective will he be?
Yeah.
How much will that injury affect him? I mean, this is a guy who rushed for almost 1,000
Yeah,
yards.
he's an older vet, too. We got to keep that in mind, Ross. This isn't a young guy that can just bounce back health-wise. He's going to feel it, just like Adrian Peterson for the Vikings that we haven't talked about. That sore back, I got news for you. That's going to hurt that running team, and that's why I really think Seattle blows up and absolutely runs away with that one. But when a veteran like D'Angelo Williams, who's got a ton of carries under his belt, gets injured like he does, you know what? He might be hurting the team more than he's helping them to try to come back too quick, and I guarantee you he'll be the first one to admit that. So how are they going to plug that hole? We'll just have to wait and see. Anything else you want to touch on?
If I can interject again, Mike, one last thing here. Don't forget, Pittsburgh's got the most dynamic passing game. If you look at their wide receivers from top to bottom, they have a trio of wide receivers that can hurt you all over the field and a solid tight end. Now, having said that, if the running game's not working and you have to become one-dimensional against a very good defense like Cincinnati, that's a whole nother story. So let's not forget that. And Pittsburgh's running back, their third-string running back, Fitzpatrick Toussaint, has only 18 career NFL carries. So that's a huge factor I would keep
Yeah.
an eye on as the week progresses, Mike.
Yeah, and I like that also. When you had touched on this earlier with Pittsburgh, when people think of the Steelers, automatically, I mean, they go back to the days of the Flying Hawaiian, and they're not that team. Their defense ranks very low in the NFL. Their secondary can be picked apart in a minute. All right, what has changed since Todd Haley took over as offensive coordinator? They got the air game going. Ben is capable of throwing for 400 and 500. We've seen it now. But like you said, against this defense, if you lose that running game, and yeah, I know Brown is the best in the league. He is. This core that they have right now is fantastic, but it's going to be one-dimensional, and all the focus will be on there. And the more that you and I have talked, and I can't wait, because as soon as I get off air, I'm placing the bet. I'm jumping on Cincinnati. I think they quietly, under the radar, just get this game at home. I like this.
I'm sort of on the fence in that game, and I'll tell you what. As it applies to the Minnesota game, I get everything you're saying, and I've heard it. It's been beat to death in the media and on the airwaves over the last 2 weeks. How hot Seattle is and how dangerous Seattle is, and they killed Minnesota 38-7. I'll tell you what. Sports betting. We're not talking about winning the game outright. You're talking about a 5.5-point dog at home in cold weather in Minnesota with a team that's has been terrific at home over the last 2 seasons. Not so fast, my friend, like Lee Corso would say. In sports betting, if it looks too good to be true, sometimes and most times it normally is. So
and Ross, and I couldn't dispute that, and I don't mean to interrupt, but what I do want to ask you, with that being said, all right, the part of us that are fans, the part of us that are handicapping, that we do what we do in this business, I know that I have to take in consideration that Pete Carroll is absolutely on top of his game. And what has become clear in the last few weeks to Seattle was that last play in the Super Bowl. And now I think they're hungrier than ever and said, damn it, I want another shot at this again. Now, Mike Zimmer, my hat is off to this guy. He's done a great job in Minnesota. He is a defensive guru, and the way that he has managed that team's been fantastic. But I saw something in Teddy Bridgewater last week, kind of scared me. He made that mistake throwing that ball left-handed, stupid mistake. But that is the mistakes you can't do at this point in the year. And I really think, and I agree with a lot what you said, Ross, but I don't think Adrian Peterson's going to be a big factor in this game because of that lower back. I just don't. And I think this is going to be a game where Seattle will come out focused. That weather doesn't scare them in my eyes. If they can play in Seattle, they can play anywhere. But I think everything's clicking on all cylinders, and this team sees and thinks outside the box right now. Very dangerous. So on that one, I got to stick to my horse there.
Let's not forget, Mike, if I can interject once again, and all very good points and a very good discussion. I appreciate this. This is the same Seattle team that, everybody talks about how hot they are. 2 weeks ago, they were knocked off at home against St. Louis as a double-digit favorite. So they're not invincible, okay? And when you look at their running back situation, Marshawn Lynch, you don't know if he's going to be a go.
Yeah.
If he is go, how effective he's going to be with that abdominal surgery.
Yeah.
Okay. And then you lost Thomas Rawls, who ran for over 800 yards as their backup.
That hurt.
We're down to Bryce Brown and Christian Michael. So
yeah,
a little bit of uncertainty there in their running back room as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what I've seen, and you too, and I appreciate these conversations as well. Growing up as a child, I used to, back in the old days watching the games. It's amazing, though. This is the time that a running back that was 3 deep in rotation will now have a chance to shine. Healthy legs, and like somebody like a Christian Michael or something might just blow up and have that big game. But at the end of the day, Ross, this is why they play the game, and it's why we love it. Anything can happen, and as NFL stands for, not for long. So we'll see what happens, but that's a game that I'm feeling really, really good about, and I've already put some action on that. But I appreciate these discussions and breakdowns, and that's, we ought to do this more often.
Yeah, no, there's nothing wrong with disagreeing. I mean, it's a great conversation when points could be made on both sides.
Yep. Absolutely. Okay, well, I think that's about all we're going over today with the wild card games and the updates. So viewers out there, I hope you appreciate the points that we're making today and some of the facts we're throwing out there about injuries and the line and the home underdog. Ross, thanks so much for being with us. We look forward to having you back with us again real soon.
My pleasure, Mike. Thank you for having me.